Thanks so much for joining us here today. And with that, I'll hand it over to Senator Warnock.
Good afternoon, Georgia. Before I begin, I want to first acknowledge that today marks the one-year anniversary of the tragic death of Ahmaud Arbery. Ahmaud Arbery, who lost his life senselessly and tragically in Brunswick, Georgia, a year ago today. I've gotten to know his family, and our prayers and thoughts are with them, and his memory informs the work that I continue to do here in the United States Senate as we make sure that we have a justice system that honors the humanity of all of us. Now, I want to bring you an update on where things stand with getting COVID relief to our state and why these investments are critical to helping Georgians move beyond the health and economic consequences of this once-in-a-century pandemic. Now that Congress is back in session, it's full steam ahead on getting this COVID relief bill passed. Know that we are very focused. I am very focused on this work. The House is taking final steps to bring the $1.9 trillion bill to a vote by the end of the week. And after that, the bill will come over to the Senate. Once the bill comes to the Senate, I'm hoping we can get it passed as quickly as possible to get help out of the door to Georgians and to people all across this country where people are suffering so very much and have been suffering for so very long. That's why I've been pushing to make sure the legislation addresses the needs of Georgians in every corner of our state. For instance, making sure our vaccine distribution efforts across the state are strong and fairly and equitably distributed, so they get to the people in need everywhere they are, including hard to reach areas and coastal towns and cities like my own hometown of Savannah, Georgia, and surrounding towns. In counties like Bibb County, where more than 13,000 students plus their teachers and school staff returned to in-person learning last week. They're taking extra precautions to keep everyone healthy. We have to do everything we can at the federal level to know that, to make sure that they have the resources that they need in order for that to happen. I'm thinking about places like Carroll County, where despite the CDC eviction moratorium, families are still facing the threat of eviction if they can't make their rent. These are just some of the people and communities and challenges I've had in mind while I've been doing this work now for a month here in the United States Senate, crafting legislation, urgently fighting here in Congress to get it done for the people. And to that end, I want to highlight just some of the investments that I'm pushing for that will be coming to Georgians in the relief package to help address some of these challenges. We're pushing for millions of dollars for vaccine distribution. It is clear that we will not get the economy going until we get the virus under control. And so we have to make sure that we get the support that we need all across our state to make sure that there is enough vaccine, that it is equitably and fairly distributed, to make sure that seniors have transportation to their appointments and provide education so folks can know how safe it is and that they can and ought to go and get vaccinated as soon as possible. $4.4 billion for our K through 12 schools that will buy more PPE, repair broken ventilation systems, and support testing and contact tracing so our schools can safely reopen. I've been pushing hard for nearly $2 billion for our state's Medicaid program that would ensure that nearly 500,000 Georgians who are in the Medicaid gap, who are uncovered, could get the health insurance they need when our state finally expands this critical program. I've been pushing for an additional $550 million for rental assistance funding in our state and more than $200 million to help low and moderate income families pay their mortgage and utilities. More than $8 billion to the state of Georgia, and more than $3.5 billion to local government entities within our state to help keep public health workers on the job and keep critical community services going. That's all on top of the investments that will ensure most working Georgians get more than $2,000 in direct payments from other federal programs like the Child Tax Credit and the Earned Income Tax Credit. These are just some of the investments that I'm pushing, that I am arguing for, as we try to bring Georgians the relief that they need. What is clear is that we cannot waste time. People have been suffering so much for so very long, and they're counting on those of us here in the Capitol to do the work that is long overdue. So I look forward to working with my colleagues in the Senate, hopefully on both sides of the aisle. I've been intentional about trying to build relationships on both sides of the aisle so that we can keep the concerns of the people at the center of our conversations. Before I take some of your questions, I want finally to take a moment to celebrate the life and the legacy of John Lewis. John Lewis was one of my personal heroes. Of course, he was the congressman from the 5th District, and he would have turned 81 years old this past Sunday. And that's why I'm proud to co-lead, along with John Ossoff, a resolution in his honor this week. Congressman John Lewis, as a young man, thought about becoming a preacher, but instead of preaching sermons, his life became a sermon. He inspires all of us, and we honor his memory by pushing forward legislation that protects voting rights in our state. Right now, there are legislators in Georgia who are doubling down on voter suppression. This is a most unfortunate development. It shows that rather than the people picking their politicians, some politicians are trying to pick their people. And it flies in the face of the basic tenets of our democracy. Let's have the arguments about the direction of our country, but at the end of the day, let the people decide, make sure all of the people can vote. And so that's why I'm pushing to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, and I'm also co-sponsor of the For the People Act. We must expand access to the ballot box, not make it harder for people to vote. I'll have more to say about that in the coming days and weeks, and I'd like to pause right now to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much, Senator Warnock. We now have time for a couple questions. Thank you to those who submitted questions upon registering for this call. If you do have a question, please use the chat function to alert me. We will work to answer as many as we can. To start things off, I will hand it over to Jill Nolan with the Georgia Recorder. Jill, I've requested to unmute you.
Hi, yes, thanks for taking my question. Thanks for doing this press conference with us. I just wondered that, with the Medicaid incentives that you're talking about, the state leaders seem to be holding out hope that the waivers that they're pursuing, that those will still work out. So I just wonder what your thoughts are, if you're concerned that even with the incentives that you're talking about, that it still won't be enough for state leaders to pursue Medicaid expansion.
I think that the program that's being pushed by many in our state, unfortunately, will cover fewer people and will cost more money. The clearest and most logical and most fiscally responsible route is to expand Medicaid. That's why I've been fighting for years, trying to get our state to do the right thing. It is costing us money not to expand Medicaid. But my hope is that through pushing this additional $2 billion in resources for the state of Georgia. We will make it even more attractive for our state to finally expand Medicaid. There's no reason why we should leave 500,000 working Georgians in the Medicaid gap. And we can do better than that. And I'm going to fight every day that I'm here to make it easier for Georgia to do the right thing and finally expand Medicaid.
Thank you so much. So next, we're going to hand it over to Itora with the Atlanta Voice. I've requested to unmute you. You can go ahead and ask your question. If we don't have a question there, I'm going to hand it over to Sam Whitehead with WABE. Sam, you can go ahead.
Hey, thank you all for doing this, and thanks for taking the question. Senator, I'm wondering what conversations you've had with Governor Brian Kemp about the COVID situation in Georgia. What have you heard from him that he has needs for the state, and what are you doing to make that happen?
Well, we certainly are open to continuing the conversations that need to happen at every level of our government to make sure that ordinary Georgians have the COVID relief that they need. I'm deeply committed to that and happy to talk to the governor or whomever else about that. I've been talking to other leaders in the state, and we want to make sure that at the end of the day, we've got to get this vaccine distributed equitably. It needs to be fair. It needs to be swift. And already we're seeing the result of the Biden administration's focus on this, finally, the implementation of a national program. And I think that at the end of the day, this can only make it easier for Georgia.
Well, and just to be clear, so have you not talked with the governor about the situation in Georgia?
I have not spoken with him specifically about COVID relief. I am happy to talk to him. I've had conversations with the lieutenant governor and would be very, very open to talking to Governor Kemp. The issue is not the governor. The issue is not the folks who serve in whatever office, or the issue is the people. And we have to center and amplify their concerns. And so my hand is always extended and ready to provide whatever support we can at the federal level.
Thanks so much for your question. I'm now going to hand it over to Fox 28 in Savannah. Allie, do you have a question?
Hi, yes, Senator, thank you so much. You touched on this a little bit, but I just want to make sure, I get a soundbite from you, just asking a little bit about, when we can expect more vaccine to be released from the federal government for allocations to the state.
Well, we're very focused, and that's my primary my primary focus right now is getting the vaccine out the door and getting that done as quickly as possible. We are already seeing some hopeful signs in Georgia and other places with the numbers of new cases at least going down, but it's still far too many cases. We've got a long way to go to get out of the woods. And this is why we've got to push beyond the kind of normal partisan politics that we see too often in our government. This is a matter of life and death. It transcends the lines of Democrat and Republican. The virus doesn't ask about your party affiliation. And for too long, the virus and treatment in response to the virus, the things that we know that you can do to get the virus under control, including wearing a mask, socially distancing yourself, contact tracing, and the vaccine. Too often these arguments have been cast in partisan terms. And this is why I'm working as hard as I can to make sure that we get the $20 billion that we need to get the vaccine distributed as quickly as possible.
Thanks
Thank you.
so much, Senator Warnock. It looks like that's all the questions we have today. I'm now going to prompt you to move forward with your brief closing.
Again, thank you all so very much for the time. Yesterday, we marked a grim milestone with over 500,000 Americans who have perished to this virus. I think too often we talk about these things in statistical terms, but for people who've lost family members, those are empty chairs at Thanksgiving, at Christmas, in the coming days. They are in our hearts, in our thoughts, and in our prayers, and I'd like to pause for just a moment and remember them. God of hope, God of justice, give us strength for the living of these days. In the name of the one who is our healer and redeemer. Amen. Thank you so much.